Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Assetto Corsa. Today we're going to be undertaking a formula challenge where we will be taking out 5 formula cars around Monza to see what we think of them. But before we start, let's quickly discuss what the latest update has brought to the sim and introduce the cars that we'll be racing. Now if you want to skip this intro, just click on the little forward arrow that should have appeared on your screen now. For those of you that have stayed, we are now in 0.21 and it has brought the following updates. But before we talk about them, let's introduce our first car. That was the V8 revving from the Lotus 49. Now first up on the updates.
Right, so the biggest news we've got so far today is the multiplayer has been sorted. Hooray!
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, we've tried the multiplayer system before and it wasn't really good.
Yeah.
You tried to get in, but it just, I think the server, or was it the host, kept rejecting you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bookingless server joining multiplayer, so I mean, now we shouldn't have any issue.
You should just be able to get into the game and that's it. Win.
Other improvements that they have got is they've actually changed the server. They've made some improvements in the gameplay itself. They've disabled the AI in the events. They've fixed crew placement in multiplayer events, and they have fixed the wrong time reported after booking for the servers that will still have booking.
Brilliant. That, my friends, was the flat 12 of the Ferrari 312T. A little more on that later, but first let's talk about the graphical updates.
First graphical update is they have introduced the new post-processing effects engine. We're not going to see too much of that at the moment, but the fact that they've actually implemented the engine means that they are working on bettering the effects that actually happen in the game. We've also got the physical dynamic track that's been implemented, so it'd be nice to see how that works. And they've got the shader fixes and improvements.
After the sim itself, the case editor and showroom have been updated with the latest graphic engine improvements. And also the fixes and replay, the suspension wasn't really working properly, so they've updated the animations for that. And they've also fixed the mirror rendering bug, because if you notice in the previous ones, the mirrors were kind of buggy. So yeah, they fixed that, and also the ideal line improvements, that's all been fixed. The biggest update to this version is the Lotus 98T, which you just had a sample of, and we will be racing this later on.
Yep, there's been a few minor updates to this game. They've sorted the time attack out, and they've managed to sort out the fixed camera triple screen, as well as some other driver names as well.
I think they've fixed quite a few things in the triple screen setup, so that's really good. Sticking with Lotus though, they have made some speedometer corrections to all the Lotus, or as we mentioned before, it could be Loti cars throughout the simulator itself, and they have done some changes in the speedometer visualizations depending on the UI options and the car design. And that was the V10 engine that has been supplied by Nevercrash from the Ferrari F1 2004 car, but this is on the Lotus T125 S1. We will be racing that later, pretending that it's a Ferrari. Let's talk a bit about the AI though.
Well, they've improved the AI starting at the same time in the qualifier, so that's a good one. And also they've improved the throttle control and the understeer detection,
as well as other improvements.
Right, on top of that, they've managed to sort out the tyre damping modification for the car, so that should come in handy. And they've also sorted out the dynamic wind controller, so now you can use that as a setup value in the initial angle value.
Also, on regards to the apps, they've actually sorted out a few of the Python apps with the error handling. They've actually improved that, so that's good. The time difference display has been improved. They have also fixed the "you've been sent to the pits" issue, which you probably saw a couple of episodes ago coming up, and also the GUI doesn't actually overlap anymore, so that's really good. The last car that we're going to be taking out is going to be the Lotus T125 Normal. We have applied the V6 Mercedes F1 engine from 2014 as a modification on this, so it should sound pretty decent. But before we do that, let's talk about the very last of the updates here.
Now they've introduced a new option where you can customize your own force feedback for each car, which is fantastic, I think.
Yep, also they've managed to sort out the adjustable brake balance, so for cars that support it, you can adjust it, and also you can also adjust it permanently via the brakes.ini file as well.
That brings us to the end of the updates. Time to get into the simulator itself. And we'll just wait a few seconds for those who skipped. They should be back in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa. As you can see, 5 screenshots of the cars have now appeared on the screen. The Lotus 49, the Ferrari 312T, the Lotus 98T, the Lotus T125 S1 and the T125. That's a lot of T's. Clicking on any of them will skip to the section of the video where we race them. And what we're going to do is take each out for a spin and at the end pop it onto a table, judging by the lightness factor out of 10. Now we will also post the fastest laps we managed to do in them, as well as the area they represent. I'm not going to be talking anymore. I'm going to get myself into the seat, get myself comfortable, and get into the first car, the Lotus 49.
Right guys, so we're driving the Lotus 49. The Lotus 49 was designed by Colin Chapman and Maurice Phillip for the 1967 Formula 1 season. And I can tell you guys, it is a really difficult car to drive. It's based around the Ford Cosworth engine, and it consists of a 3-litre V8.
Yep, and that produces 410 brake horsepower, 9,200 RPM, so it's a high revving car. It's also a 5-speed manual gearbox, weighing at 530 kg, so that's a very light car. So you can just imagine the power to weight ratio is fantastic on this car.
Yeah. What I'll do now is, we'll stop with the facts and figures now, and we'll actually have a look at the car. Look at it. It does look very. I really like it.
Yeah.
The fact that when you can see all the chrome.
The sun's just gleaming on the chrome as well.
Yeah. I like the. Have you seen the gear knob?
Oh yeah. And every time you change the gears, it actually moves
it does,
up and down.
You can see that. But
It's got a very retro feel to it, doesn't it?
It is, yeah. I love that. I think it's mahogany, the mahogany feel. But it's. I drove this car yesterday, and it is a terror to drive. My colleague here, he's concentrating really hard right now, but I tell you, it is a terror to drive.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very challenging car. There's no electronics involved in this car.
Yeah, it's pretty old school. But it's fun to drive. Once we go from a really modern car and we go to one of these sort of cars.
It's a pure engine, isn't it? There's no electronics involved. Yeah. That's the one thing I like about it.
But like I said, if you go back from one car to this, modern car to one of these cars, you really appreciate, the modern car.
Yeah. You can just I don't know, you just have that sense of vehicle history and motor racing and all of that. One thing I can just really pick out on this car is you can see how the suspension mounts are going up and down.
Yeah.
Fabulous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really good. What we're going to do now is we're going to have sort of a power lap on it and see what sort of speed we can reach up to.
Yeah.
Right lads, so as you can see, the Lotus 49 posted 2 minutes exactly. And yeah, I mean, what sort of fun factor score would you give it?
Ooh, well, it's really a tough car to drive. I'll give it that. I like the way that you really have to manhandle it through a corner. I'm gonna have to give it a 7. I'm gonna say 7 out of 10 for fun.
Yeah, we'll give it a 7 then.
So we'll just pop that up onto the table, and we'll move on to the next car.
This is the Ferrari 312T. It was raced by Niki Lauda in 1975 to 1980. It's also one of the first cars to have introduced aerodynamics, which means you have better cornering speeds.
Yeah, well, I mean, this car, well, like you said, was made famous by Niki Lauda. But, I mean, it was a Ferrari, so, I mean, it was always going to be famous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in comparison to the Lotus 49, as you can see, it's quite modern inside. No chrome. I honestly prefer the Lotus 49 compared to this internal look. But I mean, like you said, it's gonna have. I'm assuming it's gonna have a better time than the Lotus because the aerodynamics. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was around straight after the Lotus 40. Well, it was around the Lotus 49 time, but they made better use of it in this car. So I think this should shave off. I think at least 5 seconds off the Lotus 49 time.
If not more than that, yeah.
But I mean, just looking at the car itself, it's got the famous Ferrari red, as you'd imagine. But it's still, you know, it still looks and feels.
Yeah.
I mean, it does still look like the Lotus 49 from outside. It's still got that, you know, that look, that 1970s Formula One look, Formula car look, even.
I mean, you can just tell by the look of the car. It looks very light. I mean, it only weighs 575 kilos. But it's also a very powerful car which has 495 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
And it's also another high revving car at 12,200 RPM.
I mean, it's a massive step up in terms of horses compared to the Lotus 49. But like you said, I mean, when you say lightweight, I mean, you can see the bolts on the screen, everything together. So I mean, it should it should shave off the time compared to the Lotus 49.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, lads, so as we approach the end of the power lap, I predicted that it's going to be, what, 5 seconds faster than Lotus? It's going to be very close. Very close. 5 seconds, and it's, well, 4 seconds, so, well, 3.1. So, you know, I was correct in a way. So, but anyway, right, let's go to the driver and ask him, what score would you give it? What a fun factor score out of 10.
I like the noise. I like the noise that the V12 makes. I like the way I can throw this into corners and correct it because of the aerodynamics. However, I don't like it as much as the Lotus 49. I'm gonna have to give this one a 6. I'm gonna have to give this one a 6 out of 10. Purely because the Lotus 49 is just that little bit, it's just that little bit more fun to take around a corner.
Right guys, we're back. This time we're racing a Lotus 9080, made famous by none other than Ayrton Senna, the most, well, I think probably the greatest driver on them all.
Yeah.
Who sadly passed away a few years back. But yeah, I mean, the 9080, in comparison to the Ferrari, I'll be honest, other than obvious differences, but they still look pretty modern, and you know, this wouldn't look out of place right now in any of the cars.
I mean, it is a newer car, 1986 model, isn't it?
But still, I'm saying 30 years on, well, not 29 years on, this wouldn't look out of place in this day and age.
Exactly. I mean, this is a V6 car, 1.5 litre, believe it or not, and apparently it's rumoured to have produced 1,250 brake horsepower, 5.5 bar boost.
Right, and this is also the first car that has a 6-speed gearbox, and weighs in at just 540 kg. So it's still very light cars.
Yeah, it's lighter than a Ferrari, that's for sure.
Yeah. Right, right. This car was the 9080 was an improvement of the 9070 made in 1985. But again, if you look at this car,
it's very simple, isn't it?
It's simple, but it looks better than the Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell it's really a driver's car. There's no electronics involved, so you know, it's just one of those cars that you just enjoy to drive.
Yeah, but I think it's more modern. I think there's a few electronics in this car, but it's in comparison. I mean, like, you know, to the first few cars, this is pretty sort of high tech.
True, yeah.
But I mean, I like the steering wheel. You know, it's still
again, it looks very old, but you can see it's a Momo racing wheel.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty modern in that sense. Right, we're gonna take it for the power lap now. I think it's gonna be probably another 5 to 10 seconds faster than the Ferrari. That's my prediction. I got the last one.
I'll agree with you there.
I got the last one correct. So here we go. Right lads, so as we come to an end of this power lap, as you can see, he's gonna absolutely cream the time off because Ferrari is gonna be much faster. And I predicted 5 to 10 seconds. I think we're gonna be in that range now. What's that? 1 minute 49.135. Right. So what sort of score did you give it then?
9.
9.
Oh.
There is no, the turbo noise, the intensity when the turbo spools up, even though it's got a V6 engine, it's loud, it screams. Taking it into corners, you saw how quickly I was changing through the gears there. It is absolutely amazing to drive. I can understand why Ayrton Senna would have been regarded one of the best drivers of all time. If you had to drive a car like this,
It does
it's
make you
absolutely
work.
magnificent.
Yeah.
9 out of 10.
Brilliant. And thanks for that, because so far all my predictions will be right. So thank you.
Right guys, so this is Lotus T125 S1. We've included the Ferrari V10 mod and skin along with the sounds. So this mod is actually from the 2004 Ferrari, which was driven by Michael Schumacher. Well, obviously everyone knows who he is. It also includes a Cosworth engine, 2.4 litre 90 V8.
Yep, like you said, it was driven by Michael Schumacher. I think the second most famous driver of all time after Ayrton Senna. But I mean, when you compare this car to the other cars, this is sort of this was sort of the new modern F1 cars.
This is the time when everyone used to watch pretty much Formula One because of the sounds, you know.
the good sounds. But I mean, looking at this now, you can see how it's sort of moved on. The life
Glossy
cycle,
paintwork, everything.
the life cycle of the F1 car. I mean, this I reckon was one of the best ever made. This sort of F1 car. The steering wheel.
Just look at it.
Yeah,
it's full of electronics.
Amazing. Yeah.
But I mean, it's not too much comparing it to nowadays. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, we do have to remember that this is an actual Formula One car, but the steering wheel does resemble exactly what you would expect from the real Formula One cars.
Yeah. I mean, like you say with this one, I mean, because it was made in the early 2000s. 2009. It should. I mean, with the aerodynamics, it should be up there. It should be up there. With comparing, much better than what they had before.
I'd also like to mention out that this car is supposed to have been a 7-speed gearbox, but in this game it's just showing us 6.
Yeah.
So I should hope they should be improving that soon.
Yeah. Right. Before we start the power lap, my prediction is it's going to be probably 5 seconds faster than the previous one. So here we go. Right, as we approach the end of this power lap, as you can see in comparison to the times of the previous one, this is going to absolutely smash it. Wow, yeah. 138 is taken literally 10 seconds off. So I mean, you can see sort of, the life cycle of the for Formula One cars, even how much time is improving. So I'm going to ask the driver now, what sort of score did you give this car then?
Well, as you know, I'm a fan of these style of Formula cars. I'm a fan of this engine. The car is easier to drive than the Lotus 98. However, I would say it's more fun to drive than any of the other cars, except maybe the Lotus 98T. So for that, as much as it pains me, I'm gonna have to rate this an 8. It's gonna have to be below the Lotus 98T.
Okay then, and an 8 it is. We're back. This is the last car in our challenge. We're racing with the Lotus T125, but with this time we're racing with the Mercedes V6 mod and skin. Well, this car was made famous in 2014 by Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg.
That's right, and the engine in this car is actually a V8, but the one that we've modded is from V6 engine, the one that Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg drove. It's a 640 brake horsepower engine with 9,800 RPM, so it's not as high as the 17,000 RPM car, which is a T125 S1.
The previous one had 17,000. So,
and this one is just 10 kilos lighter. So yeah.
But again, the sound of this car has been in the news lately, and it's not the best sounding cars, is it?
No, I'm not really a big fan of it, to be honest. Because all you can hear is just the turbo, and there's not really. I don't really think there's an engine sound to it. Do you think?
Nah. But I mean, to be fair though, I mean it does look like an F1 car, you know. Looks wise. I mean, if we get putting the sound to the side at the moment, the looks of it, I think it's done a really good job on it. You know,
I'm not really a big fan of the nose, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, for what you can see, the looks, it's done a good job, and I think the speed, is it going to be as fast as the previous one?
I don't really think so. No.
Possibly, I reckon it'll be there or thereabouts, but I think it'll put my neck out and say it'll probably be slightly slower.
I'll have to agree with you there. We'll see about that shortly.
As we take into the final corner and as we get ready for the power lap.
Oh, it looks, it is slower because our previous car wasn't it?
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, we shall see. But yeah, we'll take it. We'll start the power lap now, and we'll get back to you in a bit.
I do wonder if this car will be slower.
Right, lads, as we go into the final corner, well, as you can see, I predicted it's going to be slower than the previous one, and I was right.
Yeah.
So I think that's 100% rare will be. But you know, more importantly, we go to the driver and say what sort of score he gave the car.
This one's a bit difficult because it's got the same kind of feel as the previous car, being the same car in its base package, but because it was lower revving and it wasn't as powerful, you didn't get that same sort of feel, that same sort of adrenaline rush.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of would get that. You don't get it in this car. It's not as loud. The engine isn't as exciting, and when you're throwing it into corners, I didn't have too much confidence in throwing it into corners, even though I knew it could still perform. Plus, it did do the lap slower. I'm sure I could have got it a couple of seconds down, but I could have done that with the S1 model as well. I really don't know where to put this. I'm gonna have to probably put it at the same place as the Ferrari 312T, and that's going to be a 6.
Okay.
I'm going to have to give it a 6. Right, so that brings us to the end of this formula challenge, and as you can see now with the table that's popped up on the screens, we can go through the times, and you'll notice that the Lotus 49, which is obviously from the late 60s, did a 2 minutes, which is quite a respectable time. But as we got through the years and went through the 70s, the 80s, sort of into the emulation of the 90s, you can see that the times tumbled. And then with the last one, the Lotus T125, which I feel quite accurately represents this year's Formula 1 cars, it has slowed down. Obviously, the real Formula 1 car wouldn't have slowed down to such an extent. I'm guessing that if I did maybe another 6-7 laps on it, I would have probably managed to get that down to maybe a 143, 142 maybe even. But the S1, I have done laps in it before, with the V10 revving right up with the extra power, I had that down in the 133s. Actually with the 138 here. Lotus 98T, I sort of surprised myself by giving that a 9 while I gave the V10 variant of the Lotus T125 an 8. But I really couldn't fault that car. It sounds great, it feels great, and it was an absolute blast to drive. And anyone who's actually bought Assetto Corsa, do try this car out. Do take it around Monza, even take it around any other track, and just go for it. It's a heck of a drive. There really isn't much I can say about that. Then after that, I'd say the second car would be the V10. Following on from that, I have to give it to the Lotus 49, just because it was very fun to drive. Going into the corners, you really had to overdrive. You really had to overdrive into the corners and really had to counter steer. I really couldn't put my foot down all the way as I could in some of the other cars. But it was still great to drive. And then after that, I had to put the V6 Lotus T125. It was slower. It didn't really excite me as much. And even the Ferrari 312T, it didn't excite me as much as the other cars. But still a great car. There isn't much more that we can say about those. Apart from that's our order. If you have a different order of putting these things, leave it in the comments box. We'd like to see what your order is, and maybe you may prefer a different car at the top, and you may have a different car at the bottom. So do let us know. Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa. Next week, hopefully with this booking list system, we're going to take a look at multiplayer. If you stayed throughout this whole video, thank you very much, and we will see you next episode.